Rockefeller document from 2010, this strategic applications for technology. I forget what the exact title is. Other people, I'm sure, will be already familiar with that. The Rockefeller Foundation predicted that there would be this pandemic in 2012 or something, and it's exactly what's playing out now.
Scenarios for the future of technology and international development. I'm going to skip down to page 18 and just read a few paragraphs and tell me if what we're seeing today isn't pretty much what they wanted all along. Page 18 starts, lockstep, a world of tighter top-down government control and more authoritarian leadership with limited innovation and growing citizen pushback. Remember, this was written in 2010. They write, in 2012, the pandemic that the world has been anticipating for years finally hit. Unlike 2009's H1N1, this new influenza strain originating from wild geese was extremely virulent and deadly. Even the most pandemic-prepared nations were quickly overwhelmed when the virus streaked around the world, infecting nearly 20% of the global population and killing 8 million in just 7 months. The majority of them healthy young adults. The pandemic also had a deadly effect on economies. International mobility of both people and goods screeched to a halt, debilitating industries like tourism and breaking global supply chains. Even locally, normally bustling shops and office buildings sat empty for months, devoid of both employees and customers. They say the Chinese government's quick imposition and enforcement of mandatory quarantine for all citizens, as well as its instant near hermetic sealing off of all borders, saved millions of lives, stopping the spread of the virus from earlier than in other countries and enabling a swifter post-pandemic recovery. China's government was not the only one that took extreme measures to protect its citizens from risk and exposure. During the pandemic, national leaders around the world flexed their authority and imposed airtight rules and restrictions, from the mandatory wearing of face masks to body temperature checks at the entries to communal spaces like train stations and supermarkets. Even after the pandemic faded, this more authoritarian control and oversight of citizens and their activities stuck and even intensified. But the end game is more unilateral power, more unchecked power, and more control by the government, by the corporations, and I would note, more bailouts for the banks. Now again, friends, that was from the 2010 document from the Rockefeller Foundation.
And Rockefellers are big developers in the early years of the World Health Organization, aren't they, as well?
Exactly.
It's all tied in, isn't it, really?
It is. And they actually declared this war on coronavirus. That was declared, I think, maybe a month ago or something by one of the US people, I think. And it's this militaristic, characterization. War on this, the war on drugs, the war on terror, the war on coronavirus. In other words, you've got to attack it with something. Well, what are we going to attack it with? We're going to attack it with a vaccine, which we'll come to shortly. And that's the whole model of allopathic medicine. It's a military model. You have a disease, you have to fight it with something. You don't work with the disease to kind of like come out with a synergistic effect to cure it, to get rid of it. You have to attack it with something. You attack it with antibiotics, anti-life. You attack cancer with chemotherapy. You poison it. You don't say, well, how can we maybe give the cancer cells some different type of nutrition so that they go away, which is kind of more getting towards the complementary approach. And that all comes from the Rockefellers as well, that whole allopathic medicine model, this military model of medicine.